You're listening to Inside the Notes. I'm your host, Erica Block. Here we have the opportunity to listen to the stories that connect our musical family tree. First-hand accounts of performances, musicians, and mentors that shape the way we listen, learn, and teach. In today's episode, we will be talking with Maestro Michael Palmer, founder of the Bellingham Festival of Music. The Bellingham Festival is enjoying its 25th anniversary this year. Thanks so much for joining us today, Maestro.
Thank you, Erica.
Well, we've had 25 years of outstanding music in the summers every year in Bellingham. How did you start the festival? How did it begin?
Well, it began as the result of the fact that I had built a home out here in the San Juan Islands, on Decatur Island. And I've been coming to the Pacific Northwest for many years, have many friends here and many close personal connections. And I was situated in this beautiful place looking at Mount Rainier and all of the Olympic Mountains and the Cascades and Mount Baker out of my house, and thinking, surely there's a great music festival around here somewhere, a great, classical music festival with all this natural beauty. And I did some investigating, found there was nothing. This was back in, 1985, 1986. And I kind of filed that away and sort of began thinking about where would be a good place to establish something like that here. And in 1990, when at the time I was music director of the New Haven Symphony Orchestra, I was here in my home, and I sent a letter over to Western Washington University and to the head of the music department there, introducing myself and suggesting that this might be something to talk about. Had got no response. 1 year later, I sent another letter. This time I got response, and I came over, and the person who was in the seat then said, let's go upstairs to the dean's office. And I went upstairs, and there met Robert Sylvester, who was dean here of the College of Fine and Performing Arts. And he had quite a career as a chamber musician, a wonderful cellist, and came out of the Marlborough School and that whole summer tradition. And so when I began talking to him about this, I didn't have to educate him at all as to what I was talking about, because he knew exactly from his own experience. And it so happened that it happened at a time when the president of the university had given him a mandate to find a way to bring the community and the university closer together. And so this really struck a bell for him. And so I had developed the American Sinfonietta, a European summer touring, or not summer, regular winter touring orchestra. We toured for 10 consecutive years in Germany, Switzerland, and Austria. And we were looking for a summer home, and we had already made some recordings. Mm-hmm. So this all suggested itself. It just kind of came together finally.
Right.
And we put together a steering committee of wonderful people from the community who could be inspired and excited by something like this. And lo and behold, in 1993, that group decided in April to put on the first festival in August.
Wow, amazing. Was the Sinfonietta similar to the festival where you had gathered musicians from different places to meet and then go off?
It was. We in those days, our manager was in Salzburg, Austria, Joachim Schlotte, and they paid for every member of the orchestra to fly from his or her own home airport to Frankfurt, Germany.
Wow.
Where we would rehearse for a week, and then we'd go on a tour that covered about 10,000 kilometers.
That's very special.
Each time, yeah. And we played in all the great concert halls, all the Musikverein, the Berlin Philharmonie, all of them, It was a terrific experience. But once German reunification came about, then the economy there went to pieces, and It was no longer possible to do that. But by that time, we had established the festival. So. And
was it basically that core group was the original festival group, and so they would come every summer?
Yes, that was the original group, and they were here from 1993 until about 2001, 2002. When we expanded the size and the level of the orchestra to include major players from major orchestras throughout the United States.
Right.
Yeah.
Fascinating. And so that original Sinfonietta, is that something that was your idea, or are you brought in to be the conductor for that? And so did you have a relationship with those musicians originally?
No, it was my creation.
It was?
Yes, yeah.
Fabulous.
Based upon my many, many years of guest conducting orchestras all over the country. And
Wow, amazing. Well, talking about this year and this summer, what do we have to look forward to? Is there works that you're specifically excited to work with the orchestra on? It seems like larger works.
Yes, we've been expanding the size of the orchestra so that we can take on some of the larger pieces in the repertoire that we have never played at the festival before. And this year, one that I'm especially pleased to be doing is Richard Strauss's Don Quixote. It is the first piece that Robert Shaw assigned to me 50 years ago.
Okay.
When I started in Atlanta 50 years ago.
Wow, that's quite a piece to be your first assignment.
Yes, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and
do you have specific memories from that experience, challenges about the piece, and have you done it many times since, and as you've evolved as a conductor?
I have done it many times since, and the last time I did it was with Stephen Thomas, who will be playing it this summer, and it was during his time as principal cello of the New Haven Symphony Orchestra when I was music director there. And I've had wonderful experiences with it. One that is an interesting story to tell, it's sort of tangential to that, was the first time I worked with the cellist Pierre Fournier. He told me about George Sell bringing him from France to Cleveland to play Don Quixote. And that was his introduction into the United States.
Wow.
And Zell said to him, you'll come over, you'll play Don Quixote, and we will introduce you to the American audience. So Pierre came, and on the morning of the performance, the dress rehearsals went really well, all the rehearsals were fine. On the morning of the performance, Zell said to him, now, tonight, we'll play the Strauss, but before that, you will play the Sixth Suite of Bach.
Heart attack.
Yes, on the morning of the performance.
Oh my gosh.
So, Pierre said he went back to the hotel and worked like a dog until the performance. And when he went out on the stage to sit and play it, there was another chair sitting there. And Zell had followed him out on stage and sat right beside him and watched his every move.
Oh my gosh. It's amazing. The things that will not happen now.
Right, exactly.
Wow,
yeah.
Amazing. Well, that will be so fun then to be able to have a repeat performance with your own cellist that you've worked with and know.
Yeah.
We have some new soloists that are brand new to the festival, is that right?
Yes, Inan Barnatan is coming, the pianist playing the Saint-Saëns G minor concerto on that same program as the Strauss. Yeah.
That'll be fantastic.
Yeah, and Simone Porter is coming at the end of the festival, play Prokofiev No. 1.
Awesome.
Yeah, that program has, I think, the Schumann Second Symphony on it. But we're going to finish the festival with the Symphonie Fantastique of Berlioz. So
stellar. That's one of my favorites.
Big sounds in the concert hall.
Absolutely. So excited. I'm so looking forward to it. And now it's the first concert at the beginning of the first week of July. Is that right?
Yeah, it's the first concert is on, I think, June 30th.
Oh, wow.
If I'm not mistaken.
Even earlier.
I believe it's a little bit earlier. It gets moved, June 30th. That's with Stefan Jakiv.
Oh, that'll be great.
And we're playing the Korngold Concerto with him,
Fabulous.
which I think will be a wonderful piece.
I was reading his bio the other day, and I realized that I was at his premiere in the Boston Symphony because I was an usher that year.
Oh, for goodness sakes.
And so I got to see him, so I'm very much looking forward to seeing him again.
Yeah.
He's so much more grown up.
Yeah, he's become a real favorite of ours.
Absolutely.
We have him frequently.
Fabulous. Well, I would love to talk a little bit about your start. Speaking of his start, what instrument did you play before you conducted?
Well, I started the piano at the age of 6, and then violin at the age of 8. So I had both of those instruments going as a child. Wow. But actually, it's really true that I announced to the world when I was 8 years old that I wanted to be a conductor of a symphony orchestra.
Did you have a musical family? How did you know?
Innately musical. My father played the guitar by ear, but he was a fine player. I mean, it was a really good jazz improviser, and had his own little group that played on weekends around. And my maternal grandmother insisted that all of her 6 children learn to play the piano.
Wow.
And the first classical piece of music I ever heard was my aunt, my mother's youngest sister, playing the Chopin Military Polonaise after a Sunday dinner at my grandmother's house.
Wow.
And that, I was about 3 then, I'm told, and that was what lit the spark off.
That perked you up.
Yes.
So how did you find out about orchestral conducting at 8? Were you being taken to shows? How did you know?
Well, up until the time I was 4, I grew up down the street from a city park. And in the summers, the band would come there and play. And my parents would take me down to be a part of that. And then, of course, as I got a little older, I went to concerts of the Indianapolis Symphony Orchestra, where I grew up in Indianapolis.
Okay, so you're outside of Indianapolis.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Wow.
And
Amazing.
had some really fine school teachers in music, a school music teacher in elementary, and then junior high and high school, extremely important to people.
When you decided to go into music, did you go for conducting immediately, or did you go for one of your instruments?
Well, I mean, at 8, you concentrate on the instruments,
Mm-hmm.
but at the age of 11, and I, at that age, you hardly know what things mean. But my father announced to me one day that he had arranged a meeting for me with the music director of the Indianapolis Symphony Orchestra,
Oh my goodness.
Eisler Solomon.
That's amazing.
And I didn't, but your reaction was not mine. I was
Yeah.
like, okay.
Okay.
So Eisler took a big interest in me. It was really wonderful. And, the drill was that I was to come to any rehearsals I could get to with my school schedule, and I would let him know ahead of time. He'd bring extra scores, and then he would spend time after rehearsals talking with me about what he had done, how he had approached this piece, that piece. And I was just 11 or 12 years old. As a result, though, of all of that, I formed my own orchestra of young people my own age when I was about 14. And we were together clear through high school, and gave us 3 or 4 concerts a year, and ended up touring the state, and some of them ended up in the Indianapolis Symphony as members.
That's unbelievable.
And one of the places we toured to and played was Indiana University, and I was so fortunate to be born just 60 miles down the road from one of the great schools of music in the whole world.
Absolutely.
And when I went there to school, Eisler intervened with the dean and said, I know you don't have an undergraduate conducting degree, it's only for graduate students, but you have to do something about this boy.
Yeah, I've been watching him for 10 years already.
Yeah. Wow. So they set up a special program for me to do a master's and a bachelor's in piano, master's in conducting at the same time.
Wow, that's amazing. Yeah. Has that stuck? Do they still do they offer any undergraduate conducting, or it has to be an instrument major?
No, I was there recently actually teaching the doctoral class in conducting, but so it went on from there. I mean, in 1964, there came onto the faculty Julius Herford, who had come to this country from Germany. Mm-hmm. He was well known as a concert pianist in Germany, but he was also a wonderful conductor, and had been conductor of the choir of Berlin. He came as a Jewish refugee because of the Second World War.
Right.
But he was known by Kusevitsky and people like that, who got him onto the faculty at Tanglewood, where he taught Leonard Bernstein and Robert Shaw and Lucas Foss and all of those people. Yeah. And he saw me conduct at the school, and he came to me backstage and said, and I wouldn't have spoken to him. He was only for the doctoral students, good grief.
Right.
But he came backstage and said, basically, in a nutshell, you're very talented, but you can't go on like you are. He said,
spoken like a true gentleman.
Yeah. Call my wife and, come to the house. So the result of this, Erica, was that for the next 3 years, I went to their house 4 nights a week. I showed up at 6 for a good German meat and potatoes and potluck dinner, after which he and I would study together, just the two of us, for 4 hours each night from 7 to 11. He started me out with the B minor Mass and the Matthew Passion. His teacher at the Stern Conservatory, James Quast, was a very close friend of Clara Schumann and Johannes Brahms.
Wow. Unbelievable.
So, it was like...
Right there. You're one step away. So how did he approach score reading? How did he teach you to study?
It was basically a phrasal analysis, but very in-depth. Mm-hmm. In other words, he told me this story that Paul Hindemith introduced him, Julius, to his class at Yale as the man who knows more about my music than I do. And Julius said to the class, it's not true, because when your teacher sits down at his desk, his head is full of notes and the page is empty. When I sit down at my desk, the page is full of notes and my head is empty.
That's awesome. That's my job to fill it.
And that was his approach. It was, don't approach the score with any kind of preconceived notion. If you're going to be looking at a movement of a Beethoven symphony, it's going to be sonata allegro, but forget it. Mm-hmm. Forget it. Figure out how this man composed this music from note to note to note to note to note, and how it all adds up to the grand architecture of the piece. So you always know where you are, where you've come from, and where you're going.
That's amazing. Mm-hmm. And I think the thing that I just keep hearing over and over is, in this time period, so many people were willing to take someone under their wing, not only as a mentor of music, but bringing you dinner, like hugs, love, music. Let's sit together. Yes. I'm going to show you the true art of how to do this. And that is so special. Yeah. Even being picked up at 11 and having someone say, no, come on in, come to rehearsals, come and see and do. What an amazing nurturing way to get into these places and get that special quality time that is so hard to get from people now, because everyone's just so busy.
Everybody's so busy, and I think too, a lot of people haven't even had time to think about where they've come from and what they have to bring and offer as a basis. Yeah, they're just so busy dealing with the next thing. Right.
But having that opportunity to say, this student has value and I can bestow a gift to them because I can see it, and let's spend 4 hours together. Can you imagine? I would die to spend 4 hours with somebody every week.
4 hours a night for 4 nights a week for 3 years.
That's unbelievable.
Yeah. So when Robert Shaw went to Atlanta as music director, he needed a conducting staff, and he called Julius to say, do you have anybody to recommend? And Julius said, take this boy.
Absolutely.
And so I graduated from college. I still had a small number of hours to go on the master's degree. And I said to Julius, well, what about my degree? He said, forget it, you've got a job. He said,
he's like, it's a means to an end.
You're starting at the top with a professional full-time major symphony orchestra as an associate conductor.
Amazing. And you were 21, somewhere around
21.
there? Wow.
21.
Wow. So how did it feel then? Okay, so now here we are. We've made it to the big times right away. Did you feel like you had to work hard to earn people's respect being so young? Did Robert help usher you in? Were the musicians immediately ready for you? How was that experience? That's so young.
Well, Joe Robinson has just published his memoirs. He and I went to Atlanta at the same time. He was principal oboe, I was the associate conductor. And his answer for you in his memoirs that he just published is that I disarmed the orchestra because I was seemed totally oblivious and unaware of the pressure cooker I was in, and that I was so. He described me as a Midwestern innocent in love with music.
It's a beautiful description. Did you feel it? Did you feel a little bit oblivious in a happy way?
Well, I think I was. It's only been later that you look back and know where you were at that age, because you don't have any frame of reference.
Right.
You're just out of college. You haven't had experience in the world, and there you are at the top of the world, but you don't even really know it. Right. Except I stayed for 10 years because Robert Shaw was so good to me. He gave me so much podium time. I was not the kind of assistant that runs back and forth to the coffee machine, right. But he trusted me, and I was just telling some of our board members this morning, and as a part of my 50th anniversary, the Atlanta Symphony gave me a beautiful bound book of every piece of music I have ever conducted with them over these 50 years.
That's beautiful.
And the date of the concert, the name of the guest artist, the repertoire, it's
unbelievable.
Amazing. It blew my mind. So much of it, well, not so much of it, but a lot of it I hadn't remembered.
Absolutely. I mean, how could you possibly be responsible for all of it? But I'm sure looking at it bound like that right there just goes to show you what an unbelievable ride. That's amazing.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Wow. So what kind of mentor was Robert Shaw to you? Was he someone who was really hands-on, or throw you out there and have you do it?
Robert, he was a terrific teacher of groups. Mm-hmm. He could stand up before a group and speak more eloquently about music than anyone I know. But he didn't conceive of himself as a one-on-one teacher. Mm-hmm. Because he had studied with Julius and I had studied with Julius, I knew the theory before going into the practice. Mm-hmm. But I saw him putting it into practice, and I learned so much from that, being there to see how he took what we had been taught and turned it into reality, I think, of course, the most revealing things for me initially were playing for his chorus rehearsals and being the accompanist for his choral rehearsals. That was an amazing experience.
Absolutely. It gave you the opportunity to have to be on the other side of the stick and feel what exactly that magic is that he's producing.
Right. Exactly. And that was an incredible experience. But he was so good to me along the way. And my very last concert with the orchestra, when I left to become music director in Wichita, mm-hmm. he gave me as my soloist Claudio Arrau.
Wow.
And I scheduled the Brahms first piano concerto, of course, with him. He was the great exponent of Brahms and Beethoven, probably the greatest of the 20th century.
Absolutely.
And he came from a 19th century background. His teacher was a student of Liszt.
Wow.
And Claudio and I formed a wonderful artistic partnership, but a wonderful personal relationship too, even though there's vast difference in our ages. Mm-hmm. We played many times together. We did that particular Brahms concerto 12 times together.
Wow. And was that the first?
That was the first.
Wow.
Yeah. And then we did the Emperor Concerto many times, the Beethoven Fourth. And you were speaking of stories earlier, connecting generations and eras. When we first talked through the last movement of the Beethoven Emperor Concerto in his hotel room, we got to the last movement. He said, "Now, Michael," he said, "Martin Krause, that was his teacher, told me that Liszt told him that Czerny said Beethoven wanted this played like so, a certain phrasing, which was not possible to really notate." So
the real thing.
I said, "Well, give me 10 minutes extra with the orchestra."
Yeah. We're doing it.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yes.
Now that you know that, is there a way to notate that? Is there a way to write that in your score, or some way to be able to have the next person who does that get to see that opportunity?
I don't think so, because if you were to notate it, it would come out too strict, mm-hmm. too strictly, too severe. Mm-hmm. It just has to do with that first theme, and at the very top of it, instead of doing da-da-dum, a slur, da-dum, bum, ba-dum, bum, beam, bum, mm-hmm. yeah, and dee-da-dum, dee-da-dum, dee-da. Beethoven wanted apparently a little space in there, a little, yeah.
Lift in patience.
Yeah, but what a way to learn that.
Straight directly from the source. It's amazing, and I guess that's why we spend so much time with recordings. When you find a recording that you love, you might not have the opportunity to know why you love it, but some of those special moments are because it's directly from the source.
Yes,
it's amazing. I believe that Atlanta is one of the most recorded American orchestras, isn't that the case?
Yes, it is.
The Robert Shaw years was the golden age.
Many, and one of the first things, the first time I heard him conduct the Missa Solemnis of Beethoven, I was on him for the rest of the next 10 years I was there to record that, and he did it several more times during those 10 years, and finally he did after I left, but I was very pleased about that. But the Brahms Requiem, the Berlioz Requiem, the War Requiem of Britain, the Verdi Requiem. I mean, all of the great choral orchestral masterworks were recorded by Telarc. Thank goodness.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah, I have several of them, and
Yeah.
I remember having the amazing opportunity just very close to when he passed away. He came up to my school in Boston and conducted us. And Howard Jones was our choral conductor.
Oh, yes, sure.
She loves him.
Yes, yes.
So we got just a teeny little
Was
piece
that
of
with the Brahms Requiem?
Yep.
Oh, yes.
Yep.
I saw a little video of that, of part of it.
And it was amazing.
Yes.
It was just amazing to be in the presence after, pouring through recordings in those years. And then there he was.
Yeah.
So
he had such a deep passion for music, but also for how music could impact society, and what what the depths were in terms of the potential there. I remember him saying once to the chorus at Carnegie Hall after one of the Carnegie Hall workshops. He just finished the warm-up rehearsal before the performance, and he said, "Now the audience is going to come in today, and they've paid, and we're going to sing for them, and we're going to perform for them. And that's really wonderful. But the only people who will really know what goes on this stage is you and me."
Wow.
So that kind of personal connection, it's like, we're going to do this, and, we're
going for it.
Yeah.
That's amazing. And that's a perfect segue to my next question, which is those magical moments when you either are a viewer or a participant. Do you have a specific piece when you were at the helm, and maybe it's a piece you loved, or maybe it's a piece that you were falling in love with, but when you left the stage, you knew, and your orchestra knew that was a special one?
I think that happens on different levels in your career. When you're a young conductor, and you're just starting out, every moment that you're on the podium is so precious to you, because you don't know if you're going to have any more. And you study your scores very hard, and you form a personal relationship with them, and then you do that very first performance, and then after it's over, you put it up on the shelf, and you don't know if you're ever going to take it down again, and that's a very difficult feeling. But so those early performances tend to be perhaps a little overwrought and a little overfraught.
Extra emotionally charged.
Yes. But, you do remember. I mean, I remember the first time I conducted several of the different Mahler symphonies, the fourth, the fifth, the sixth, the Derek Cook version of the 10th. Those were always so incredible experiences. The fourth, my first performance of that was in Atlanta, and it was Robert Shaw had asked me what Mahler symphony I thought he should start with. So I said the fourth, because of the last movement being vocal.
Yeah.
This was in 1969, and Mahler had just, Bernstein had just sort of set the Mahler resurgence going on in 1960, the 100th anniversary.
Right.
So it hadn't been around that long, but everybody was playing Mahler, so he thought he should do something. Well, he scheduled it for a May concert the year later, and the March before that he called me up and he said, "I can't stand all this self-centered music. You want to do this piece?" I said, "Sure,"
Oh my gosh.
So,
awesome.
That was, doing that the first time was a terrific experience for me, just spectacular. But what happens once you find, yes, you're going to take those off the shelf again, you're going to do them more. Oh my gosh, it's been 50 years. Oh, good grief. Then you begin to feel like, wow, I'm finally getting it. It's finally, I think, a piece for me. I've done the Beethoven symphonies for 50 years, but the performance we did this last summer at the festival of the Eroica, finally I felt like that was it. And it was one of those. It was like you get up on a it's like a surfer who gets up on a wave, and the wave just never quits, and you couldn't be more safe. You just ride along. And I think that happens when the conductor plus everybody in the ensemble is so incredibly well prepared, not just for that particular performance, but from years and years of preparation.
Absolutely.
And experience, that suddenly this thing just clicks in and it just happens. It's you know, you don't feel like you're doing it anymore. It's like it's being done through you.
Right, right. You become a vessel for the energy, and it's always amazing to me, especially when you're dealing with such high level musicians all around, when everybody is because they're bringing their biggest game, they're just at their peak. You end up pulling stuff out of each other that they didn't know they had another 5% to go.
That's right.
And if everybody starts kind of supporting each other in this, I can do better, it gets into this unbelievable tension of energy in a positive way.
Exactly.
And I mean, everybody leaves breathless from the experience.
Yes. And almost regretful, because you know something really special has happened. Now it's gone.
I know. I know.
What about next time?
You're afraid to exhale and inhale again, because you just want to keep feeling that. And when you can feel your audience, you can feel that no one's daydreaming, that everyone is sitting on the edge of their seat. You're on the edge of your seat. I mean, it's just a collective moment of full attention.
Yes.
Which is, I think, very rare these days.
Yeah.
Complete attention.
Yes. Yeah.
Were you ever at a performance where you were able to experience that anywhere in your career, where you just felt that person's outer worldly energy just grip you?
Well, I think yes, but those artists, I don't know, maybe there never were that many of them around, but I miss them. Artur Rubinstein. I went to a recital that he played in Indianapolis. Unfortunately, it was the night before my senior recital at Indiana University as a piano major, and for his encore, he played the Chopin Nocturne that was on my program.
Wow.
Totally destroyed me. But
it should motivate you.
But those artists, I don't know, it was the time in which they lived and performed, I guess. And they were so much in touch with a tradition that you had the feeling when a Rubinstein is on the stage performing that you're being invited by him to come with him and worship at the altar of this great piece of music, instead of what we have today, which is, look how wonderful I am, look how I look, look at the clothes I'm wearing, look how I throw my arms around, how hard this is to do, but how great I am for being able to do it. That has nothing to do with what we're tasked with as artists, I think, at all.
The intimacy of the heartfelt.
Yes.
Spirit to spirit.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Beethoven said it for the Missa Solemnis. He said it's from the heart to the heart. Yeah.
Yeah, I think, and those, there was an understated quality to some of those just unbelievable legend artists, and a humility.
Yes.
And they just played, and it wasn't about them.
Right.
It's just the music.
I think part of it is the younger artists today seem, they're desperate to be noticed, of course. There's so many of them.
Right.
And they're just, but if they could just relax a little bit and think about the piece they're playing and love it and communicate their love of it to the audience.
In an honest, kind of just open way.
I think then you're fine.
Absolutely. Do you have any funny stories of sick soloists, or this is broken last minute, just complete chaos, where behind the scenes it's a mad frenzy and a heart attack central, and then you go out there and everyone plays and the audience is none the wiser?
Well, when I first went to Atlanta, the Atlanta Symphony Orchestra in that first year was still a part-time orchestra. Everybody taught school, and so rehearsals were from 4 to 6:30 in the afternoons. And the next year it went to a full-time orchestra because the Ford Foundation grant kicked in, and from then on it just went, like mad. But that first year we were rehearsing in a junior high school auditorium, and a junior high school gymnasium, yes. And Robert Shaw had just come from the Cleveland Orchestra. He had worked at the very top of the world all these years, and here he was at the age of 51, rehearsing this part-time orchestra.
Wow.
In a middle school gymnasium. Well, he was a little bit beside himself, and it was pretty clear that he was kind of the only one around who knew how to do this, what he was doing, There were so many near misses. Here's one. For the performance, we would move down to the arena downtown where the circus came and all the wrestlers and all those people. and we would give our concert there. Well, one of the programs was had the Mussorgsky pictures at an exhibition. And our stage manager people were some good old Southern boys who were nice people, but they hadn't had a lot of experience. And we were in we was at the performance, and in the first half of the concert, well, the Mussorgsky ended the performance. So before intermission, I was kind of walking around backstage, and I didn't see the chimes. No chimes. I mean, the Great Gate of Kiev without chimes. You know. So I went to these guys and I said, "What's with this?" You know. Oh, we forgot they're at the school. So the concert's going on. We jumped in my Volkswagen Bug with a sun thing, and we raced to the school. Got the chimes, put them in my car with them sticking out the top, and raced to the concert hall. Got there just in time. Just in time.
Wheel them out.
Yeah, people, nobody had noticed, you know.
Oh, yeah. I love it. It's such a high octane experience for those doing the running, and
yes.
And everyone is none the wiser otherwise.
There was also one time a Tchaikovsky concerto with Rubinstein, where the stage crew had forgotten to lock the wheels on the front of the piano.
Oh my gosh!
And you know, it was one of those old-fashioned stages where the footlights were down a little slope, and you know, he hit the top chord at the beginning, and that whole piano went right into the footlights.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah.
Oh, it's hysterical.
Yeah.
I feel like, you know, it's bound to happen. It's not when something's going to happen, or if it's going to happen, it's when it's going to happen. Right. It never gets any easier, but...
One of my teachers told me, well, my conducting teacher at Indiana, he said, if you conduct long enough, everything will happen to you.
Exactly. So just know that going in and look forward to when you can check some off the list, because it's going to happen.
Yes.
Oh my gosh. Well, we only have time for 2 more questions. What is one of your favorite stories that was ever told to you by a colleague or teacher, anyone that just sticks in your head it's a fabulous one?
Well, this is a story that I heard, and it was kind of around in the business, in the field, and I'd heard it for years. And I was at a party where Claudio was, and I started telling this story, and I said, "This is probably apocryphal." But the story goes, there was a pianist who came in to substitute at the last minute, and there was no rehearsal time, and you know, it was in an orchestra in South America, and he thought that the piece was the Emperor Concerto, but it was. And Claudio interrupted me. He said, "This is not apocryphal. It happened, and I was the pianist." Yes, and he said he got out on the stage and sat down, and he looked at the conductor and shook his head. "Yes, let's start." And the conductor looked back at him and went, "Yeah," because many people may know that the fourth piano concerto of Beethoven begins with the piano by itself. And of course, the fifth begins with a big chord in the orchestra. Mm-hmm. So there they were nodding to each other. It was time to start, you know.
It's like, I'm ready.
Yeah.
I'm ready.
Yeah. And so the conductor finally came down to Claudio and said, "You know what?" And he said, "Well, why don't you start?" He said, "Well, why don't, wait, which piece is it?" You know. So, it's the fourth. Okay. So Claudio played the fourth. You know, I mean,
oh my gosh.
He just was able just to do that.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. And can you imagine, how do you get to that place where you don't just drop dead of a heart attack, that you go, "Oh, well, okay.
Yes,
I guess we're doing the fourth.
Yeah.
Let's go." That's amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. And what is your very favorite story to tell of your many, many amazing escapades throughout music, that if you're going to be at a party and someone says, "Tell us something about you," what's one that you love?
Oh my. Well, the first time that I ever conducted from memory was a live television broadcast of the Atlanta Symphony Youth Orchestra.
Wow.
And this was in my third year in Atlanta as associate conductor. And we had learned the Brahms First Symphony. So this was televised live locally on WSB in Atlanta, Georgia. And I was standing backstage, getting ready to go on stage, and the producer says, or the stage director says, "Okay, go." And I started out, and I got just before breaking to where the audience would see me, and I saw there was no score on the stand. And I said, "Oh, my score isn't there. We've got to get." Go. This was live TV. Go.
So it was an unplanned first memorized experience.
Unplanned. I got out on this stage and I got up on the podium and I looked at the concert master and I said, "Do you have an extra first violin part there?" No, they didn't. So,
Off you go.
Yeah.
And it was memorized, of course.
Well, yeah. I mean, I had studied it very hard, of course, like
Absolutely.
I do all my scores, and
Absolutely.
it worked.
Terrifying.
Yeah.
But amazing.
Well, you don't have time to think about it once it starts.
Right.
You have to be there. So
On it and ready to go.
Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you so much for sitting down and chatting. That was fabulous.
You're welcome, Erica.
We're
I
so
had
grateful.
a good time with you.
And we look forward to the festival this summer.
Thank you. I do too.
Thanks for listening to Inside the Notes. I'm your host, Erica Block. Be sure to check the Inside the Notes Facebook page for details on our next guest.